Hey, what's up, you guys? I'm going to start posting the conversations I'm having and I have had with influential sales and business leaders on this channel because I believe you'll find value from actionable strategies that you can find more success with, and also hopefully entertainment as well. You can find all of these episodes at Sales Prestige Podcast on Spotify, Apple if you want to download it if you're traveling or on the go, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel now so that you don't miss out on future episodes. Enjoy.
My mom said to me, Kyle, if you can jump on a pogo stick for an hour straight, I will buy you a dirt bike of your choice. I'm running a startup within a large public umbrella, right? I like to ask a question in interviews, like, tell me about a time where the odds were stacked against you and you overcame, right? Like, we're all trying to gain that edge in some way, shape, or form. Have an idea in mind of where you want to go and stay the path even when things get hard.
And we are live. So I was in my kitchen about 5 minutes ago cooking salmon, and I get a message from Kyle saying, hey, let's run it about an hour early. So I am heated up right now, ready to go, excited to have on Kyle. Kyle, how are you?
Trent, I'm doing awesome, man. And salmon's a good thing to be eating for a lean guy like you, so well done.
We got salmon, quinoa, veggies on standby the minute we get done with this. But this is going to be a value-packed episode. Congrats on the recent promo, by the way. I want to call that out.
Thanks so much, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's been a blast.
So for those of you guys who don't know who Kyle is, you need to know who he is. So it's very rare that I see somebody on LinkedIn to say, hey, I actually want to follow them and check out their stuff. And 2 years ago, I remember messaging you, Kyle, and saying, hey, really enjoying your content. I like your stuff. Followed you. We've kept in contact since. And now we finally have the chance to chat. So I think it's going to be a great episode for everyone listening.
Yeah, I would agree, Trent. And you're super humble, but I will let the listeners know I was in a coffee shop this morning with a guy that I've mentored over the last 6 to 8 months. And he broke into tech, helped him break into tech, went from SDR, just got promoted to an associate account executive. And I was telling him a little bit about, hey, I'm going to be on, this guy Trent Dressel's podcast later on. He's like, Trent Dressel? Yeah. No freaking way. I watch all of his YouTube videos, his TikToks. Like, they help me so much. It's like, dude, you're doing some like really awesome work that's impacting people. It's pretty cool.
It's always cool to see it. I'll tell this brief story, and then I want to start asking you questions because that's what everyone's here to listen to. So I was at Chipotle the other day, and the guy looked at me a little funny, a super young guy, and he said, "Hey man, I'm interning at AT&T right now. I love your LinkedIn post. I really want to get a job as an SDR." And when you see that with this niche community, it's super cool. So I know you're doing the same. So speaking of SDRs getting to the next level, you helping people get hired. So something we were talking about before this is limiting beliefs and getting to that next level. And that's what I'm all about with Sales Prestige. That's why I started it, to help people get to the next level in their lives, their business, their careers. So go ahead and talk about your career and let everyone know what you've done and your thoughts on getting to the next level.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I would need to back up like well before my professional career, if you will, right? Like some of the most successful individuals that I've met have gone through some very real things in their life, and they've taken those past experiences and the things that they've learned from those experiences and they apply it directly to business. And so I had a great upbringing. My two parents still married. I'm the youngest of four, so I was always the underdog, right? Like wanting to play with my older brothers, but not being big enough or strong enough or fast enough to. And so that always incentivized me to just work harder because I wanted to play football with them. I always tell the story of my brother Dan, teaching me how to play catch with a football. And I would throw him a pass, or he would throw me a pass, and I'd drop it. And he's like, if you drop one more pass, I'm going inside. And I dropped the pass, and he'd go inside. And so the next day when we would play catch, I would catch more passes. And I just remember that being like really impactful when I was growing up. So yeah, played a lot of sports. Fast forward, senior year of high school, I started getting these really debilitating headaches. And they couldn't figure out what was going on. I got tested for Lyme disease. Are you familiar with Lyme disease?
I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah, and I guess just for everyone listening. So Lyme disease, it's a bacterial illness. It comes from a deer tick. And I grew up in the woods in New Hampshire, and deer are super common, playing in the woods all the time. I had really long hair, so they think the tick was like somewhere under my hair. I got bit, got infected with Lyme disease, and I've been battling chronic Lyme disease for the last 12 years. Definitely on the up and up over the last 5, but it's something that I still live with every single day. And so going through the process of, dozens of doctors and tens of thousands of dollars worth of treatment, things not working, this thing infecting my heart and my brain and really just taking away a lot of the things that I love, you have to really get a grip on like, all right, am I going to let this thing beat me or am I going to beat it? Sort of a mentality. And And I remember, it really, it wasn't the medicine, it wasn't the different treatments. It was like me being dedicated to my health and fitness. It was working out, exercise, water intake, nutritious food, all of that really, I think, got me to a place where I was able to start to get to the next level in my health. And so it's kind of the workout, health, wellness, sleep, rest, no alcohol, eat very clean, hyper focused on hydration. I infrared sauna almost every day. I work out every day. That's kind of my saving grace, if you will. And so, you learn a lot about discipline in those years in my particular story. And I think that's really just translated into my work. Everything I do is pretty regimented, and I'm hyper committed to, going out and make sure I'm doing the right activities every single day to over deliver on a number.
I saw on LinkedIn your post. So you had a day off last week and you posted your itinerary for the day. And I remember commenting on it. It was 4:30, wake up, read, meditate, do sit-ups, whatever, and then getting into sand volleyball, biking, all this stuff. Talk about your morning routine and how you think that sets you up for a successful day.
Yeah, and my morning, Monday through Friday, is pretty regimented. So yeah, it's a 4:30 wake up most days. Unfortunately, my gym opens up at 5:30 right now due to COVID. It was 5 o'clock, so now I'm a 5:30 a.m. workout guy, if you will. So 4:30 wake up. I make a small cup of coffee, a little oatmeal with some granola, a little protein powder, and peanut butter. I get into the Word. I journal, meditate, throw on Headspace. I'm out the door at 5:20, over to the gym when the doors open at 5:30. I work out usually for about an hour, hour and a half. Get back. I'm at my desk between 7:15 most days, and it's straight into work from there. So that morning routine for me, like knocking out the hardest thing I know I'm going to face during the day, which is typically a brutal workout. Like that allows me, it gives me that boost to really just like hit the ground running when I get to work.
That's how I feel as well, because when you face that initial obstacle upon waking up, you almost get that early win. So next time you face resistance, you say, hey, well, I've already done it. I might as well do it again. Whereas if you don't wake up, if you wake up hungover, low on sleep, you watch a lot of TV, whatever, and you don't do that hard thing in the morning, whenever you have to do your mining, your cold calling later in the day, I feel like you'll say, I don't want to do it. I face the resistance. So speaking of that routine, it sounds like it's really set you up for success. And I know just checking out your history, you promoted awfully fast from a sales rep to now a second line leader. And I want to talk about that. But I think a lot of people are curious about individual contributor versus sales leadership. So why did you decide to get into sales leadership?
Yeah, I think one of the things I've always enjoyed about sales is the people, right? Like on a daily basis as an IC, you and I would get to interact with sometimes a dozen to 15 plus customers. And for me, it's always been about the people, whether it was leading teams or it was working directly with customers or my family or my wife. It's always been about people. I believe that's why we're here. I don't think we're here to just like live in our own little corner, operate within the four walls of my office, stack a bunch of cash, and then die. Like to me, that's not what life's about. So for me, it has always been about the people, and I get a lot of fulfillment in helping people. So like being at this stage of my career and helping a first time rep, go out and pay off their student loans, like extremely rewarding, right? But your question around IC to management really wasn't my decision. So I built some really strong relationships, and I'm very grateful for the leaders that I've gotten to work with here at Zoom Info. Not only my direct manager, but also my VP and above. Like I got to, and I was very intentional about building deep relationships with them, and they earned my trust early on. And so when they said, hey, this is in your best interest, I trusted them. It wasn't even a blind jump at that point because I knew that they knew what was best and they had my best interest at heart. And so an opportunity popped up. I got a call from my VP when I was at the gym. I was on the treadmill. And he was like, hey, they're looking to slate you to head up this business unit that they're launching. And I was like, that's cool, but I'm crushing it as an enterprise rep. Like, I was like pushing back. I didn't want to go into management at this point in my career. And he was just like, you know what, like this is really in your best interest. Like, trust me when I say you should take this leap. And I'm forever grateful that I did. And so yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. But that was really how I got into leadership. I wasn't aspiring to get into leadership. I thought IC was my play. But somebody I trust and who believes in me said, hey, go for this. This is in your best interest.
The way I like to think about it is whenever you perform in the role you're at, the rest usually takes care of itself. So you, of course, can be proactive and reach out to leaders and share your intentions of, hey, I want to be a rep on this team, or I want to be a leader at this place at that point. But if you just focus on what's right in front of you and performing in your monthly, quarterly, annual quota, whatever it is, I feel like the opportunities start to find you. And it sounds like that was especially true for you on top of having a strong brand, which we will get to at some point. But I know a lot of listeners of this show are relatively new in their career, perhaps SDRs or account executives like me. As a leader, when somebody comes to you and says, Kyle, I want to be like you, I want to be a top performer, I want to be on your team, I want to do really well, What are some of those tips you share, or perhaps habits or cadence or consistency? What do they need to be doing day in and day out to recognize consistent, sustained success?
I want to hear everything about what they're doing outside of blowing out their number, right? Like as a top performer, it is table stakes that you over deliver on your quota, right? On that either quarterly, half, or annual target. And so in my mind, and being in software sales now for a bit, you get an understanding and a sense for how some of these top performers operate and the way that they think. Blowing out your number is table stakes. None of these folks are in this business to hit 100% of their quota. Like they're trying to do 2, 3, 4x, 5x that number. And so when I talk to folks that are looking to either join my team or looking to get into tech sales or looking to get promoted from SDR to AE or AE to senior AE or whatever that looks like, really, it's like, talk to me about what you're doing outside of blowing out your number, because in my mind, that's what separates the best from the good. And so what that actually looks like is like, how are you pouring into others when it doesn't directly impact you right out the gate? How are you building relationships with key stakeholders internally that are going to help you get to that next level, right? Because your personal brand is everything. And when I came to ZoomInfo, I was very intentional about wanting to be that guy that they know if they threw me into a room and it's a pile of like I could turn that into gold. And that's really what I aspire to be. And so for me, it doesn't matter the product that I'm selling, the team that I'm working on, and what I'm working towards. Like I want to be known for somebody that's so resourceful, who's always going above and beyond, who's willing to do the hard work to get the desired outcome. And if you throw me in, I'm going to figure out a way to turn it into gold. And so I always ask questions around like outside of quota. What else are you doing?
I would encourage everyone after listening to this to go look in the mirror and stare yourself in the eyes and say, what am I known for? Am I known for what Kyle's saying, being the most dependable, reliable person around? Am I known for being the hardest worker in the room? And ask yourself, what do you think your reputation brand is? And maybe ask some people close to you and be very clear about that, because that's going to be important in your trajectory. What do you look for somebody joining your team, whether it's an outside hire or somebody promoting from within? Because I know I've seen some posts of you that you are hiring. So I'm curious, what do you look for when hiring? And I think that this will be especially helpful for those people that are looking for a new opportunity or just looking to get their initial break in tech sales.
I think I'd lead with, don't let your insecurities be at the forefront of stopping you from doing whatever it is that you want to do. I'm someone who doesn't have a college degree, doesn't have this wild background in technology sales, and I'm extremely grateful to be in the position that I'm in. But I had a lot of insecurity around not having a degree, not having the right information or experience or relationships, what have you. But what I had that most didn't was the willingness to go above and beyond. And when somebody told me no, I tried 4 more times. I actually got shut down from ZoomInfo 3 times in 6 months.
No way.
It wasn't until that 4th time I wrote either a blog post or a LinkedIn post or something about it, but it wasn't until the 4th time that they said yes. And so, it was one of those things where I knew what I wanted. I knew eventually that like my hope was that it would happen, but it required me to stick it out for 6 months and 3 no's to finally get that yes on the 4th time.
What did you do in between? So when you got the initial rejection, it was probably heartbreaking. What did you do at that point? Were you just focused on improving? Were you doing other work? I'm curious what that 6-month gap looked like from the initial rejection to the time you finally got in the door.
Yeah, I was working at another company. So I was at a smaller startup. I had been a customer of ZoomInfo for many years prior. And so I had tasted and seen. I brought ZoomInfo and my knowledge of ZoomInfo to this startup and helped scale and saw the tangible ROI that this platform has to offer. And I knew I wanted to be here, but I also knew that I didn't have software sales experience. And I do believe that that experience is critical in hiring for some higher level roles. But out the gates, like I will take somebody that's willing to go toe to toe with, some of the best in the business and who are hyper disciplined, outwork anybody in the room. Like it's not your product, your feature knowledge necessarily to get you started in SMB. It's like, can you relate to someone? Can you go deep enough with someone to understand their true business pain? And if you can just press there and you can press long enough and you're likable, you're easy to work with, and you're showing them like, hey, look, you can trust me. I'm somebody that delivers, I'm resourceful, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help you believe in this. I will take that all day over some of these other folks that might just have the relevant experience.
How can somebody show that to you? Because this is one of the most common questions I get from people is, hey, I have no college degree like you, or I don't have relevant tech sales experience. How can they actually show that to you without being able to say this is the experience on the resume?
I like to ask a question in interviews, like, tell me about a time where the odds were stacked against you and you overcame. Like this could be personal, it could be professional. Like I kind of let the candidate take it and run with it. But like, talk to me about a time in your life where it was challenging and like you came out the other side either in better shape or, unscathed, or maybe you had a bunch of marks on you. And I think what that does is it really makes folks think about like, all right, what are some of the challenges, things that I faced in my life? And what did I have to do? What skills did I have to put together? What people did I have to meet? Like what journey did I have to go on to overcome that thing? And so to me, it speaks to a lot of things. It speaks to one, like, can they handle rejection? Are they coachable? Are they resourceful? Are they going to make my life easy when they come in, because they're not going to slack me 100 times every 5 minutes, right? So I think it speaks to a lot of things. And some of that grit, I think grit can be coached to. I don't think that everybody has it, right? Like I think you can coach to it, but I do think that there are some folks at the core who just have a certain level of grit and they're cut from a different cloth. And that question I really like and leads into some interesting conversations.
And it takes a lot of grit to even get in front of someone like you with limited experience. So for those of you listening that are trying to get that next opportunity, get creative, get some grit, get in front of the right person, and then do whatever it takes to show them, hey, I can get in, I can learn, I can grow. And I think a key component of that, and something that you've been speaking to as an underlying theme, is the limiting self-beliefs. And I believe the only limitations are the ones we place on ourselves that are self-imposed. So if you believe, hey, I can do virtually anything, if you say and write it down, then why not you? Why can't you go do it? So could you talk about your relationship with limiting beliefs, since it sounds like that was something you really had to overcome early on, and now it seems like you're someone who's super focused, knows what they want, who is driven. How would you help someone remove some of those limiting self-beliefs?
I would go back in time, right? So the example of me being insecure about not having a college degree. Although I was a semester away, I dropped out and I chose to pack up my life and drive fully across the country to the West Coast. That was something that held me back from thinking I could come and work at like a major publicly traded, software company. I think what I did in that process was I reflected back on times where I overcame some wild adversity. Right, I'll tell you a quick story about how I jumped on a pogo stick for an hour and got a motorcycle.
We have to hear.
Yeah, and I'll tell that just real quick.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with motorcycles my whole life. My dad had gotten a Harley Davidson when I was young. And I just remember like, man, I always wanted to have a dirt bike in particular. And so I had the gloves, I had the jerseys, I had the posters all over my room, but like we just never could afford a dirt bike. And so I would always bust out the wanted ads and see if anybody had the dirt bikes for sale in the newspaper. It's the first thing that I would go to. And we were on our family Christmas trip to Maine. We would drive up to Maine to cut down a tree as a family. And we're on our way back. I remember having a sore throat. And I remember we started having this weird conversation around jumping on a pogo stick. I don't know how it happened. But long story short, my mom said to me, Kyle, if you can jump on a pogo stick for an hour straight, I will buy you a dirt bike of your choice. And so, long story short, I stepped out in the driveway. I had cough drops in hand. I had a water bottle that had straws stacked up. And I was going to have somebody come and like feed it to me because I knew I was thinking all the way through it. And I jumped on a pogo stick for an hour straight when I was 13. And the next day, my mom bought me a 2007 Suzuki DRZ 125L. It was the black edition, the big wheels. And it was like those types of moments helped me internalize the fact that you truly can do whatever you want to do. You can. It's you that stops you from going out and making it happen. So in my early career, right, as I'm like, all right, I don't have a college degree. I've spun up a few businesses that were successful, and I've sold things since the age of 4. Like, I know I can do this. I just have to believe that I actually can, and then set out a plan and go in and just knock those things one at a time.
Dude, your legs must have been absolutely burning after that.
I flopped in the grass in tears. First off, my mom was like, "You're done, you did it." And I heard the oven, she had the oven timer going, and I could hear it from inside. And she's like, "You're done, you did it." And I was like, "No." I was like, "You're lying, you're lying." So I probably ended up going for like 3 more minutes because I didn't believe her. But sure enough, yeah, I was on fire.
Yeah, when you tell a story like that and you think if you give this guy a few direct lines, it's over. Quota is absolutely eviscerated. So I want to get to that in a moment, but I think that's something that's interesting about you. That's how you got on my radars. I saw you doing flips and all sorts of singing songs, all sorts of stuff, posting the content. And I was like, who is this guy? Something is different here. So that's why I followed you. So could you talk about the importance of a personal brand and putting yourself out there and doing things that may seem silly? Because this is something I've experienced as well, with posting a lot of videos and content. And at the time, it could seem cringeworthy, but all of a sudden, it connects you to someone that leads to XYZ outcome. So talk about your relationship with creating content and the importance of a personal brand.
Yeah, look, I think everybody is constantly after the X factor, right? Like, we're all trying to gain that edge in some way, shape, or form. And you lie to yourself and you're like, all right, I'm going to look at the top performing SaaS AEs. I'm going to go do exactly what they did, talk the exact way that they talk, dress the same way that they dress, follow the exact same pages that they follow, and I will one day be an enterprise SaaS AE, right? The reality, though, is like that X factor is you. And so who you are at home, who you are to your family, your kids, your spouse, whatever, like, you have to bring an element of you to work. And I don't believe that like you should waver, whether you're at work or you're at home. And so I think what I realized early on, especially as an SDR, was that was the only way to stand out. Like, I would send videos of me doing flips. Like, I remember my title lines, and I use this as an AE as well. My subject lines in my emails would be like the value prop for whatever I was trying to push. And then it was plus me jumping off of a cliff, or like the value prop plus me doing a wheelie on my dirt bike. It was always something plus, because you don't care about, necessarily increasing ROI by 30% in 3 days. Maybe you do. But you do want to see somebody jump off of a cliff. Like, that's interesting. So my open rates were massive. And then when you can pack that with a powerful value prop, my conversion rates were wild, and I was closing a lot of business. So when it comes to creating content, what stands out is like you being you. You have a unique skill set, a unique personality, unique relationships. Like, what you're doing is hyper unique, and it goes against the grain. That's why you stand out, because you're not doing this the same way that everybody else does it. You're doing it because, one, you want to add a ton of value to people, and two, you're hyper driven. You want to be successful. You're already super successful, and you're like very, very hungry. And so the way that you attack this, you stand out like a sore thumb. That's why people know who you are, because you bring you. And although you'll probably have those moments of like, well, somebody at work is going to see me talking about how much I earned this year, and you probably have those thoughts. It doesn't matter, because you're you, and that's what stands out, and that's why people are attracted to what you're building right now. They can relate.
Totally. It's all about that interesting factor, the X factor, like you called it. And something I have been recognizing for a while is it doesn't really matter if you're a top performer if nobody knows who you are. There's a lot of people that are performing really well, but what is that X factor, like you said? And I think a cool story, we were talking about it briefly before this, but the trouble you went through to get that light behind you. Could you talk about how you got that light and how that has led to some cool opportunities as well?
So I got a gift one year from my brother, and it's this little hustle lamp that's off in the distance, but it's just a neon light that says hustle. And I thought it was really cool. One of the things I really liked about it was, as soon as I was done for the day and it was nighttime and I'd shut my lights off, but I kept this light on, it lights up my whole office and it looks really cool. But it wasn't in frame. And when I had it in frame, honestly, I think you could kind of smell the commission breath of like hustle, hustle, hustle on customer calls. And so I was like, all right, I really like the neon light. I like what this represents, but I need something a little bit more formal. And I was like, I wonder if I could go and make a light like this that is just ZoomInfo branded, and whether or not that will actually help me sell more ZoomInfo. And so I went to a couple of different suppliers. I ended up ordering one off of Alibaba. and had this thing manufactured over in China. I paid close to $300 for it because it was a shipment of one. It actually came relatively quickly. And so I popped it up, and man, I could probably dig through Chorus right now, and you would just see the amount of times customers would say, that light's super cool. Like, how can I get one? I'd be like, well, just buy more Zoom info, of course. You know? So yeah, it was just one of those things where I thought it would stand out. It did. It got the recognition from many people at the company, and they actually ended up giving them out for President's Club this year, which was pretty cool.
That's so cool. So you can't even quantify the ROI on something like that. We've talked about it for like a 16th of our conversation, just talking about that very light. So that's super creative. So I want to talk about Zoom Info. So I'm a big fan of Zoom Info. We at our org, and they're not a sponsor, but I will plug it. Basically, we had one Zoom Info license between like 15 SDRs. So we would take turns. We'd go in there. We'd find our direct lines. We eventually got an enterprise license, and then I feel like it had a meaningful impact on productivity. And not all tools actually do that, and it is a tool that drives revenue activities, actually making more money, making calls, direct dials. I use it every day to confirm the email address and to use the direct line as well. So how do you guys coach reps to use tools like Zoom Info, and what is your overall thoughts on go-to-market as we think about direct dials, cold calling, emailing, and just generating pipeline?
Yeah, and this may sound biased, but hands down, Zoom Info has the most sophisticated go-to-market motion that I've ever been a part of, that I've ever seen and have ever witnessed. And we should, right? That's the space that we lead. And so I think, folks really they follow suit. And we talk a lot about our go-to-market strategy on our blog called The Pipeline. And our CEO, Henry Schuck, too, he's wildly open about the things that we're doing to drive our business forward. And so the way that we actually coach our reps and help them really get into the platform and understand, like, what are their top fit accounts? When should you reach out to them? How should you reach out to them? How do you get them into an automated cadence with Engage? Like, let's get an understanding of sentiment within a demo leveraging our Chorus application. If you're talking to a talent acquisition team, they should be using Recruiting OS to go out and find their next best candidate.
Hey, Kyle.
And so there are all these different tools now within the Zoom Info suite. And depending on what you're doing, we have it all. So when it comes to coaching these folks, like, if you were to ask me 5-10 years ago, people just knew Zoom Info as a list provider. Like, hey, can you get me that person's name, their cell phone number, and hopefully an email address, right? It's so much more than that with the sales intelligence that we provide, marketing intelligence, recruiting intelligence that we provide. So it's ongoing. I've used the tool for 7 years. I learn something new every day.
So as you think about going from a rep, and I'm curious in your thoughts on this, I want to dive into it. So you recently became a second line leader. So what was kind of the transition going from a leader of reps to it now sounds like more of a leader of a business unit? How has that approach been? And I know you're about a month in, but how do you think about that? Because now it's more strategic. My actions influence more people. And just talk about what that process has been like for you.
It's been a blast. It's been a major learning curve, a lot of responsibility. Essentially, I'm running a startup within a large public umbrella, right? And so having a management layer now and being able to coach up a manager and managers is something that is new, very exciting. But being in those shoes, I know what they need. And so a lot of it is a lot more strategic than just drive dollars, right? Like, get me into a deal. I'll be the super AE. I'm your manager, which I'm a super AE, and I can come in and close for you. I think that's when management isn't done properly. I think really good managers, they don't manage people. They do manage deals. They trust their people. They coach their people, but they manage deals, right? And if you can forecast accurately and you can actually build out more of a systematic algorithm of like, hey, here's what we're going to bring in this month. One thing I'm always thinking about are different data points that I can apply to my forecasting strategy to become more dialed than the month before. And having access to all of this data, it's a little overwhelming, but I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, that would be really cool. We should probably add this into our forecasting algorithm is what I'm calling it. It's really just an equation and different data points. But I'm hyper focused on like, how can I get my manager and my managers to that next level? What does it take? And as we scale this business, right, like there are certain things that we haven't cracked just yet. And so the things that are working super good, that's not what keeps me up at night. What keeps me up at night are the things that are going horribly wrong or the things that just aren't great yet. And that's where I spend most of my time. And that's how I instruct my managers to really spend their time.
Speaking of getting to the next level, how do you think about goal setting, and what does that next level look like to you? And the reason I ask this question is because what I've found in my career, I've promoted multiple times, and I'm always so focused on getting to that level and saying, I just want to promote. And then all of a sudden the next day I say, well, I have a bigger number now, I get paid more. But now it's that next thing. I feel like it's always chasing, and it's hard to just say, well, I'm happy where I'm at. And I feel like you're someone who's super driven. So you're probably thinking about, okay, what is that next level? So how do you think about goal setting? Do you write down your goals? And I know I want to parlay that into journaling as well, because I think that that's complementary here and something I know you do.
Not only do I write down my goals, I have all of my goals written on a whiteboard over there. And I have it broken down by quarterly. I have it annually, quarterly, monthly, and then weekly. And so I have my weekly tasks, which are those Post-it notes, and I move them from up top to done. And just the satisfaction of taking a Post-it note and moving it down has been really cool. So I'm a visual guy. I have Post-it notes all over my walls, just like with inspirational quotes and things like that. But I definitely break it down into bite-sized chunks. To your point around like, wanting to grow in your career, get promoted, lead teams, whatever that is. We talked earlier on this podcast around blowing out your number table stakes. Like every new rep, that should be your first and primary focus, is how do I get to my number as quickly and efficiently as possible? But then after that, like how am I making my manager's life easy? How am I making my director's life easy? And how am I making my VP's life easy? If you can't answer the question of what makes my VP's life easy, then you need to go back to the drawing board and ask more questions. Because when you make their life easy, they know you make their life easy. They know they can put you in a certain room and you'll be able to deliver on whatever that is that they're looking for. So that's kind of the gist that I would give there.
Let's end on a quote here. You got any quotes swirling around on Post-it notes that we can drop the mic here on?
Yeah, I do. This is my quote of the week. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you, and you won't know when you get there.
Dang. What does that mean to you?
I think it means have an idea in mind of where you want to go and stay the path even when things get hard, because I don't think that it's us that knows what's best for ourselves. And I think that's just kind of the journey of life.
Dude, it's so much uncertainty. And I think it starts with knowing that end destination. That's the one tip I shared with my team this past quarter as one of the few that hit quota was I write down my goals every day. And who's more likely to hit their target? Someone who writes down their goals 356 times a year or just once around New Year's, whatever it is. So write down your goals. Take it from Kyle. I will drop Kyle's information down in the description below. Kyle Willis, you can find him on LinkedIn. However you may be listening, watching, viewing, make sure to subscribe now. Kyle, thanks so much for the time.
Thanks for having me, Trent.